Today I want to talk more about my dad. So like when I said that when he died and all his cop buddies said he was the best. Well, he really was. And for a number of reasons. Like, my dad was always going on different courses and stuff and getting trained in different... He was early in his career when I was really young, maybe only 3 or 4. He was in a brutal car crash, though, just as he was training to be on the SWAT team. Like, the OPP call it the True Team. But same idea. But then he got in this really bad car crash and broke his leg and, well, all kinds of places in his foot. It was basically his whole leg was just sort of crushed. But he recovered fully. It just put a kibosh on the whole SWAT team thing, which, whatever, that is what it is. Like, that's, all things for a reason, kind of spiritually, right? Like, maybe there's a good reason why he wasn't supposed to be on the SWAT team. Because what he did, I think, really, I was just talking to my dentist the other day who had him for VIP, and, my father was very respected in this town, and it makes me so proud. That's his legacy. But he was also, he wasn't corporatist enough or fascist. Like I said, during the 80s and 90s, that's when this government was really infiltrated by lizard-brained fascists that were all about making money. So, when his staff sergeant pulled him in, staff sergeants are kind of like, the OPP is staff sergeants like a chief or whatever, like the boss, local boss. And, his dad was a constable at this point in Forest. And he's like, we need you to, you're not getting enough. There was quotas, for like seatbelt charges and whatever, make money for the government, right? Which is, you're not hard to do that. You're hard to keep the peace. But again, it was this really money grab time where everything was, slash and cut and privatize everything. Like I said, I lost my job because it was outsourced by guys that do whatever, maintenance and stuff. Same thing with the army camp, though. Like, if you were a cook with the army, you got like $25 an hour. A cook with the army camp got 8 to 10. With the catering companies that took over the contracts, which were worth multiple millions of dollars. But anyway, so like I said, he just wasn't fascist enough. So like when his staff sergeant said, you got to do more of this or that or whatever, and he's like, hey, look, I live in this town. My kids go to school in this town. My kids play hockey in this town. I don't want everybody hating on my kids because Divine's a prick. Right? My dad was more like my dad was like Andy Griffith or whatever. Like, he was like the local sheriff, A woman I know tells a great story about my dad going to the post office, and there was a lineup, right? And dad gets in there, he's like, God damn it, I have a roast on the oven. Whatever he says, right? And she said it was like the parting of the Red Sea. Like, everyone just got out of the way, let dad go to the front, get what he had to go, and get back home so he could, not burn the roast or whatever. But anyway, like I said, he was really well respected, and that makes me so proud. But he also, like I said, he kind of he didn't want to play ball with that. Like, he another time he was promoted because there was you used to go from constable, I think it was, to lieutenant, I don't know, not lieutenant, colonel maybe, or I don't know, corporal, there was some other thing between that and sergeant. And he made that, and just as he made that, got that raise or whatever, they got rid of the that rank, and instead of bumping him to sergeant, they denounced him back to constables. Like, he was like, what the hell, right? Like, he was actually, like, he took that personally. And he quit. And then he started working in Chemical Valley at DuPont. Now, if you want to look into the belly of the beast, DuPont was one of the original players that came up with Agent Orange, which Agent Orange then became basically Roundup Ready, which gives everybody cancer, which is why it needs to be outlawed, and it is in most of Europe. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent there. So anyway, he kind of fought back against that, right? And he quit and he went to DuPont, and he hated it there, though. Like, he made good money. That's the thing. Like, DuPont dudes, man. But it was also brainless work, and he's not a brainless guy. Like, I get that it was literally driving him crazy, So that didn't last long. But again, like I said, it's weird how, as John Lennon so perfectly stated, life happens while you're making other plans, or something like that. I'm kind of paraphrasing, I think, but anyway, so he was at DuPont. DuPont had awesome Christmas parties, way better than the OPP, way better presents, $200. But again, they also had this, they're like super, super rich, right? DuPont's one of the richest families in American history, I think. Up there, anyway. They were a part of the American Nazi Party, so that's a bit of a tell, or one of the finances of. So anyway, he didn't last long there, and he quit, and then he applied back to the OPP. He's like, well, actually, no, for a little bit he worked for Sarnia, the Sarnia police, and actually I think he hated that even more just because it was such a gong show. Yeah. So anyway, he applies back to the OPP, and they're like, yeah, we'll take it. But to punish him, they send us to Eastern Ontario. So basically from one side of the province to the other. And they did that just to be pricks, right? Like, they were just messing with him. That's the thing. Like, my dad was I guess a bit of an enigma to them, because he was a great cop and he was extremely skilled, super smart, like, brave. One time he told me he single-handedly went into the local Hell's Angels branch and subpoenaed a guy right in, their hideout. And like all the bikers were actually impressed. Like, fucking, I tip my hat to you, sir. Because he had balls. Men of action appreciate other men of action. Just put it that way. So, he quits, he goes to Ingleside. Well, he gets stationed in Long Sault, and we moved to Ingleside. Ingleside and Long Sault basically being kind of little suburbs of Cornwall. Yeah. And, but then that's when, he met all those guys, like Goose, who was great. So again, and I have friends too from that area, like, shout out to my buddy Derek, and, I have people out there that I'm still in contact with. And actually, Paul lives in Ottawa now. So, like, I definitely have and I have family in Montreal. We actually, that's the other part of that. We did have family there, and we spent a lot of time with our Montreal, Je vais clan, which, they're great. Such good people. Anyways, so, and he was always going, so he goes to Cornwall, and we had that experience, but he was always, and as soon as he could, he transferred back to, Exeter, I guess, is where he went. I'm not exactly sure. But we always kept our same house in Forest. Like, we rented it out while we were in Ingleside. And so we didn't end up coming around again. But, it was a bit more of an adventure, and actually, in retrospect, I appreciate that. Those were the learning years for sure. So, like I was saying, he was always going on these courses, and again, I think that the brass was sort of just playing with him with some of these, because in this in particular case, he goes in, and this guy's doing a lecture about trusting your gut instincts, and he goes on to tell a story about my dad. Like we were living at this. I was born in Milton, so again, this is when I was really young. But he was working out of Milton then, and he was up really early because he had to go to. He was telling me he had to go to court or something that day. Like, so he had a kind of a lot on his plate, sort of. And this guy's retelling the story, right? Pretty much like verbatim or whatever, like paraphrasing, but same idea. And because Dad took such meticulous notes, right? Number two greatest regret is that I didn't take pictures of his notes and make a book, because it would have been awesome. But anyway, so it's early in the morning, just basically that twilight. The sun hasn't even really risen yet. And he's driving through the country outside of Milton or whatever, and he sees this great big ass flame out in the field, right? And he's like, that seems weird. But again, he said he was like, he had a lot on his plate. He was kind of like, I don't know, but whatever, I'll just forget about it. He's like, no, that was something that just tugged on him. Like, it was like something rotten in Denmark is the actual quote, not Venice, but Denmark, I think, is the actual Shakespeare. So he turns around, he goes and starts going up this farmer's laneway. By this time, he's caught the attention of the farmer, and he walks up. I think he was carrying a shovel. There's something about a shovel anyway. And but he kind of meets him at the gate, right? Like, but he also kind of stayed out of the light, right? Like the driver's lights or whatever. He was sort of couldn't quite really see him that well. But anyway, just kind of rolls down the window or whatever. He's like, what are you burning out there? And Buddy's like, well, I'm a pig farmer, and I got some stuff I wanted to burn before I got to my crops, my morning chores, and Dad's like kind of looking at his body behavior and whatever, and he seems sort of okay, and that seems to add up. So he's like, okay, well, fine, carry on. And he made a note of it or whatever, like I said, and he kind of put it aside, and again, then he's at this. Well, a couple weeks later, his staff sergeant, again, kind of the boss, says, Divine, what can you tell me about this incident that you wrote about, or whatever? And it turns out that what Buddy was burning back there was his girlfriend's husband, who shot him at her place in Toronto. The two of them rolled him up in a carpet, put him into the back of this big ass, whatever, big brown Buick or something, but back in the 70s, right? Like, something about a Goodfellas. And and then they went and took the body to his place, his farm. He chopped it up into little 2-inch cubes, and he was burning it in diesel fuel when it caught the old boy's attention. And the reason they found that out is because the woman's next door neighbor saw them struggling with this carpet, right? And she's like, that carpet seems awful heavy for that fella, right? So she calls the cops. And this is before there was 911 or whatever, right? So she's like, I just saw some people, my next door neighbor was carrying out a carpet. It didn't seem right to me because it was real heavy and, whatever. They're struggling with it. And at one point, I think I saw a foot come out. No, she didn't say that. But she's like, well, and the guy was like, well, could you describe the vehicle? And she's like, oh yeah, it was brown. It was really big, right? And he's like, oh, okay. Well, what else do you got? And she's like, well, I wrote down the license plate. The guy's like, awesome. Give me that then. So they got the plate. They found out all the shit. They ID'd the body by a little piece of the spine that was remaining, but this guy had back x-rays. So they were able to ID the body by this. Like at this point, the big guns had come in, right? Like that had just sort of, I don't know, it just felt something was off with the force. And that's why I love him and miss him, but I still sense him.